Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our discussion covering AI for sustainability. This is our final episode of our three-part series exploring how AI is becoming a tool for companies to achieve impactful sustainability results. In this episode, Pina Schlombs and Eryn Devola discuss customer success stories, address the environmental impact of AI, and cover how companies can see the return on their AI investments sooner. We hope you enjoy the show. So, Pina, you previously talked about how important it is for companies to build a base with their data, but now companies have access to more data than they ever have before. How should they go about determining quality data?
Yeah, sure. So I see a couple of points that companies should be looking at in determining the right quality of data. And I don't think that we have a lack of data per se in the industry. It's just that like 80% is not used today. So we're gathering tons of data every day, but not making use of the most of it. So a couple of points in how I see companies determining data quality. So the first one would be actually defining what data quality dimensions are relevant for your company in your domain. So that could be establishing clear criteria such as like accuracy, we talked about that before, completeness, consistency, validity, timeliness, uniqueness, integrity, reliability, and relevance. Now, the next step I would encourage companies to do is what is called data profiling. So using automated tools to analyze data for patterns, anomalies, and inconsistencies. And this really helps in identifying areas that needs improvement. Also use like manual reviews, like step by step, to ensure that the processes you're implementing actually meet the goals or the standards for quality that you've set out in the beginning. And then also what a lot of companies need to do is data cleaning. So you might have tons of data, but they're not useful to be deployed for AI purposes, and implementing processes that help you not only identify where you need to correct, remove incomplete or inaccurate data, and automate that would be a very good way to start building that base of data that I talked about earlier. Do regular audits, really ensure that also with your day-to-day operations, the data standard that you might have established at some point does not get diluted down the line. And then last, I would say, establish a data governance, right? If you don't have it already as part of your data strategy, establish a framework that includes the policies of how to not only gather data, but also how to ensure that you have the right data that you can trust and actually make decisions on, right? Because that's what we want to be able to do in the end, that we can have confidence in the decisions that we can take with the data that we're leveraging here. So those would be the main points I see and would encourage companies to take into consideration when looking into the quality of data.
Speaking of data, supply chain transparency is crucial for creating sustainable industries. Eryn, how can AI contribute to the flow and exchange of data between companies, and why is it so important?
With data, we first need to maybe rethink. And I thought we were told for years that data is gold. And like some people, we took this gold and we bury it in our backyard and we don't want anyone else to know where it is and we don't want to share it. And so I think the most critical component of being able to use AI added on to the quality piece that Pina already talked to is really about sharing unless. Being much more open with sharing data within our own companies, but also within our supply chain, and putting these two things together. And that's something that is really a cultural thing within our organizations, to really be prepared to share unless there's some reason not to. And that's been a hard one, is to get people to dig up that data out of their backyard, dust it off, and be much more willing to share it. And we're seeing that in companies in certain industries. For example, the Together for Sustainability initiative, which is an initiative in the chemical industry. They've really gotten together and determined how they want to share data with each other as in the pre-competitive space, but also along their supply chain. So their suppliers are using the same language and the same types of data to communicate and to share and to build a more complete picture of the footprint of the products that they have. And that to me is the foundation, is being able to be having data that's in the same language, in the same units, in APIs that speak to each other and recognize one another. And then you can put the analytics of the artificial intelligence right on top of that. So for me, that's really a bit of that foundation, having people that understand what they need in your supply chain and in your industry, having them get some availability and quality within that data, and really then having people in your network then that have similar philosophies and similar goals moving forward is important. And then you can really use that data to create the digital twin of that supply chain. So you can really see what's going on and model what changes would look like in the supply chain. But for me, the really first thing is that cultural change of getting people to be more willing and more open with the data that they have and knowing what use cases the data has serves.
While the benefits of AI are obviously huge, it's impossible to talk about AI without discussing some of the roadblocks and challenges companies can face while implementing it. And according to a recent Reuters report, 38% of respondents said the most difficult part of AI adoption is projecting and measuring its return on investment. What can companies do to see their return on investment sooner?
So from my perspective, I really see this pulling together a couple of the topics we touched on. First is cultural, getting people to understand that AI is a tool, not a threat. And then I need to share my data. I need to share my expertise with the AI so that it can help me. And so that's what we really, I think, is the first roadblock to that, at least getting its adoption forward. We also talked about getting the data to be able to be more integrated, where I can connect pieces of data that relate to one another. But I think you need to do that first to understand the return, and especially the time horizon of the return. I think it can do more than we understand. And without first understanding what we have, I don't think we can get the full perspective of how it can help us. I would actually say any return you think you can have, I would double it, because there's things that you'll get from it that you don't even see yet.
Yeah, I can absolutely support that. So I think that the potential that AI brings is really, we cannot even begin to perceive what it is today. And that, of course, makes it very hard to calculate what the actual ROI is going to be, if the benefits are even greater than we can imagine, right? So, but tapping onto, okay, why do we struggle and what hurdles do companies face? I mean, we touched upon a couple of them already around data quality, maybe also availability of the right kind of data for that, but then also integrating AI into legacy systems, right? So, I mean, how can we achieve scale with the availability of this perfect technology? I mean, even what we do, right? We integrate and embed AI capabilities into the legacy system that we have. And of course, that makes them available to teams as soon as they're integrated, but it also democratizes and makes them intuitively useful in a way that teams and people are already accustomed to working. So seamlessly integrating these capabilities into the systems and into the processes that people are working with today at the right points. And I think this is also maybe something crucial we haven't touched upon till now, is identifying at which points in the processes is AI most useful. Right? I think we're sometimes very enthusiastic about everything that it can do, that we sometimes throw it at problems where it's not the most useful, right? And then we're disappointed we're not getting that 10x increase in speed. So being understanding where AI is the most helpful, right? As we talked about earlier, complexity, we need a certain expertise that we don't have available, and then applying it to these use cases. Of course, there's also, I do believe, beyond the technical and the organizational change implications, I do see it as, and I think we internally can say that we have a positive example of that, having leadership inertia, right? Having our leadership in companies tap into this powerful new technology and show, okay, what I can do, right? And even in their own domain, but then encouraging forward thinking, supporting this exploratory adoption, and getting maybe also this fear of maybe being displaced by AI, which I don't think needs to be a fear today, actually, but getting that out of the way, getting this hurdle of using this powerful technology down for people to explore and experience what it can do for them.
Recently, there's been some concern around the amount of computing power AI requires. So I want to ask, how is Siemens addressing the environmental impact of AI, particularly in data centers, and in what ways is Siemens contributing to the solution?
So I think, as we know, innovation is really driving a lot of this. And we've even seen with the rollout of DeepSeek relatively recently that there are different ways you can process the data and different ways you can filter that processing. And we have a lot of expertise here because we've got so many simulation products on the market, which require quite a bit of energy to process. And we really look at how we prioritize and how we check that before we invest all the way through in the full processing. So a lot of it's a little bit about designing the software itself that we use and helping our customers do that and design their AI with energy consumption in mind at the beginning. I really liked what Pina said earlier about when you train your model, especially in the area of industrial AI, giving it the right data, not necessarily all the data. So when you really have a clear use case, you can then give the model the data that it needs to make those types of decisions, the expertise in that domain, not the expertise in every domain. And so there's a little bit of focus that I think is needed for us to drive that through, to minimize the use in the energy center. So for me, that's always the first thing you want to do is minimize the use. Then once you've gotten it down to what you think is the optimal amount, then how do I electrify and put on renewable the cooling and the processing that's happening within those facilities. And we actually have quite a few solutions within our smart infrastructure portfolio that can really help people drive a more sustainable energy production and energy usage once we've done everything we can to minimize how much energy we need. And I think that that's really something that's pretty cool and pretty important moving forward. There are data centers already with AI-powered cooling management, like the Greenergy data centers in Estonia, that are really showing us that this is a possible way to do it and that the innovation will help us figure out how to move it in a more lean and sustainable implementation of the AI that's helping us become more sustainable in the implementation of the products that we produce.
Yeah, I think what is beautiful and builds on what Eryn's been sharing is that AI really comes into optimizing itself at every level of the AI tech stack. So be that from the hardware design, where we have our PCB design software with Expedition that optimizes how we not only the thermal management, the resource allocation that is needed, but then also going into the next levels on designing the architecture with our SimCenter portfolio, or the next levels of the applications itself, right? That can be, for instance, with our Mendix portfolio. And the beautiful self-feeding cycle here is that AI can be used to actually improve its own applications.
Finally, I want to move back to success stories and talk about companies who have successfully implemented AI for positive sustainability results. Do either of you have any examples of that, whether that be in our own factories or external companies that use our Siemens portfolio?
One of the best things about AI is it allows us to get a custom approach. And, for example, if you're trying to fit everything through the same model, you might have to buy the biggest shoe size or the biggest shirt to get everyone to be able to fit in it. And we see that a lot in our industrial solutions. We've worked with a company called Automation Innovation, where they are responsible for cleaning molds for glass production. And what was happening is they said for the dirtiest molds or the most extreme cases, that's how they had to design their process. So that means that it's a long process. It means it might have some chemicals in it that have some potential environmental risks and safety risks to them. So what they were able to do instead is saying, hey, everything needs to take the size 15 shoe. Everything needs to be in the biggest, most robust case. They were able to customize the approach for each of the molds that they had coming through using their 2D and 3D imaging data, being able to look at that digital twin and decide based on the condition of this specific mold, what is the right way to clean and prepare this mold for its next round. And being able to do that gave them this ability to really then reduce the process from up to about 5 hours to under a minute per mold. I am not kidding here. It really is a huge difference because I'm not trying to run through every possible thing this mold could need and do all of those things to one mold. I'm really able to customize a cleaning process and eliminate the harsh chemicals while doing this. So as they've gone ahead and implemented this solution with an innovative robotic and with the AI coming in, they were able to reduce by 700,000 tons of raw material that they save every year. They're able to prevent the emission of 1 billion kilograms of CO2, and they reduce their on-site energy usage by 30%. This is why we talk about how being more sustainable often also makes you more resilient and more profitable long-term, because really what they did is they took the AI and eliminated waste. And by eliminating that waste, they really made strong strides in sustainability at the same time.
A super strong example. Maybe I can share one where a customer leveraged AI in a different domain, being closer to engineering. And this is a company in the electric and electronics industry, Harting, which basically trained a design co-pilot on all their historic design data from their PLM system, right, where all the drawings, all the CAD models, all the simulation models are managed. They trained the co-pilot on all of that data so that it had the understanding, okay, which requirements, which specifications determine which kind of designs are needed. And what they did here, I think very cleverly, is have this design co-pilot now be able to understand and basically translate from natural language, me, you, anyone, talking into telling it, well, I need a connector. This is what they do. A connector that has these specifications. It needs to have this space. I only have these limitations. And then it could, within minutes, you can really watch it create from scratch a completely new design, including the drawings, the CAD models, the simulation models, and even optimizing for the environmental footprint at the same time, right? Because it has the understanding not only what needs to go into these products, how they are structured, how they need to perform, but also be able to simulate, okay, what would this design performance look like in the real world, and then give you a validated, simulated design as a feedback within minutes without anybody having to touch basically any part of the process or needing any engineering expertise, which is really an astounding example for me.
Thank you. It's really cool to hear about companies who are implementing AI solutions to see both sustainability and profitability results. Thank you again, both of you, for joining me today, and I think this has been a really awesome discussion. But lastly, before we sign off for the day, are there any last words or bits of advice you'd like to leave, potential AI adopters with or our listeners with?
I would just say share and less. Let's open up the gold mine that we have in the data that's already being collected.
I would say embrace the powerful technologies that we have, especially AI in convergence with technologies like digital twins, IoT, 5G, and 3D printing, to create breakthrough innovations that we need in our quest to transform the industry for sustainability.
A quick thank you to our listeners for tuning in to our discussion today on AI for sustainability. We'll see you back soon with new episodes of Scaling Sustainability Impact.